Hey, what's up? My name is Bim, and today I'd like to talk to you about gaming monitors, or at least my gaming monitor. So a few months ago, I built Cobalt. It's my current gaming PC, and it can't really be considered a beast by today's standards. I think it never really was considered. It never was eligible to be considered a beast. It was obsolete a couple of weeks after booting it up for the first time, because I bought the NVIDIA GTX 980 Ti a couple of weeks before the 1080 dropped, which was horrific timing on my part. I knew it was going to come out. I knew the 1080 was going to come out, but I didn't know exactly when. So when I was shopping around, the news that I was reading was it'll be out by 2017. But apparently that's not the case. GTX 980 Ti, never really top of the line, but it was still getting about 60 plus frames. It always consistently got more than 60 frames for games like Overwatch or Left 4 Dead 2. But the problem was I was using an old 60 Hz monitor. It was my old reliable Samsung PX2370. It served me well for years, and I played dozens upon dozens of console games on it. And for console gaming, 60 Hz is perfectly fine. Most console games, you get 30 frames per second anyway. But with PC gaming, I felt like I was just wasting all the frames that I was wasting all of the frames I was getting out of my GPU. So I decided to upgrade my monitor. But now I'm faced with a choice, right? Do I stick with 60 Hz or like maybe a little over 60 Hz, but increase my resolution to 1440p? Or do I want to churn out as many frames per second as my system and allow and actually see those frames? Now, if you're faced with this kind of decision like I was, what you have to look at are the following: the types of games you play, what you look for or what you enjoy in games, and what is the experience you want to have. But for me, I do enjoy graphical fidelity. I love gorgeous games. I actually enjoy taking screenshots on games like Witcher 3, Uncharted 4, just so I could stare at them because they're so gorgeous. If I had gotten a 1440p IPS monitor, it would have been great because you would have seen more detail and in better color. However, I also like playing shooters, and in shooters, especially for first-person shooters, refresh rate is the most important thing. You have to have more information per second to work with. If you're putting out 100 plus 80 frames on a 144 Hz monitor, then you're seeing 144 frames per second instead of 60, right? If money was no object, you could just slap in a couple of GTX 1080s in SLI and then buy a 1440p 144 Hz IPS monitor like the Asus ROG Swift PG248Q and call it a day. But since I'm on a budget, I guess like most of us are, I had a choice to make. Do I go higher resolution with better color and sacrifice the refresh rate? Or do I go with refresh rate and be happy with maybe a 1080p monitor, which isn't bad, right? So after a lot of research and fiddling around with different types of monitors, I decided to go with refresh rate, sacrificing some color fidelity and the higher resolution. I want to be able to churn out as many frames as possible from my GTX 980 Ti, as much as it can. This is because while I'm not great at shooters, I never really was, I do want to get better, and I want to get as much of an advantage as possible while still enjoying games at the best graphical settings that I can get. So what monitor did I end up choosing? I ended up with the Asus ROG Swift PG248Q. It's a 24-inch gaming monitor with a TN panel with a max resolution of 1920 by 1080. It has a response time of 1 millisecond and has a native refresh rate of 144 Hz. But that refresh rate is overclockable to 180 Hz. And the real kicker here is that it comes with G-Sync. But yes, I have been seeing like contradicting opinions on the internet about if you really need G-Sync, but I've yet to see any stuttering or tearing with the games that I play, even with the ones with the really wild frame rates. So I guess it works. I haven't really tested it without, so I don't know. But G-Sync is there if you want it. I thought it was kind of important, so I decided to go with the one with G-Sync. So I've been reading that when you overclock the PG248Q to 180 Hz, there will be visible scan lines and the colors get washed out. But in my experience, yes, you do see the scan lines. I was about to say tan lines. Scan lines on dark backgrounds. Not dark backgrounds with some contrast to them. So like imagine the default Windows 10 wallpaper, desktop wallpaper. So you see it there. If you really look for them, if you put in the effort to look for them, you will see them. Besides, you could always just switch back to 144 Hertz if you're not playing, right? And the colors are fine. The colors don't seem washed out at all. I mean, after calibration, at least. And at least to my untrained eyes. So the Asus ROG Swift has a display port, an HDMI port, yes, one of each, 2 USB 3.0 ports, and if you're using this monitor with a PC, use the display port to get the benefits of G-Sync and the refresh rate of 144 Hz. If you're using a console, go ahead and use your old HDMI cable. It should be fine. In terms of form factor, the monitor is subtle, but not sexy. Subtle in the sense that for most gaming peripherals, they're usually really crazy, elaborate, especially for the Republic of Gamers line. But this one isn't. It's kind of subdued in its own way. The base is heavy to prevent the monitor from moving when you're adjusting the panel, and the texture of it is kind of nice too. It's got a brushed metal finish. The panel itself pivots 90 degrees for vertical viewing when reading comics or coding. It tilts up 20 degrees, down 5 degrees. It swivels 60 degrees to either side, and the height can be adjusted up to 120 millimeters. All in all, very versatile for a monitor in terms of positioning it the way you want it exactly. In terms of colors, out of the box, the colors were horrible. They were really, really bad, especially the presets. They were all either super overly warm or dark, or just really muddy. But after going online, I was able to find settings that I found acceptable. So the colors now, after adjusting the settings, are still a little saturated, which is kind of expected of a TN panel, but they're pretty good. But still, you know, if you want super accurate color representation, this monitor might not be for you. If you're going to do any important print graphic work, maybe not for you. This is primarily a gaming monitor. So for me, I just set it up one way and I just keep it there now. I don't mess with the presets anymore because the preset ones are pretty horrible. In terms of viewing angles, and I know this is supposed to be bad on most TN panels, but personally, I find the left to right angles aren't bad at all. The vertical viewing angles are worse if it's tilted too far front or too far back. Then the top or the bottom gets a little dark. But you know, for TN panel, it's not bad, and it's a 24-inch monitor, so you're sitting directly in front of it. You're the only one using it, right? You just have to make sure that the view is directly in front of you. You should be fine. There are other features of the monitor that I kind of set up once and never touched them again, such as the low blue light, which reduces eye fatigue. I set it to level 2, and I found it perfect. Didn't touch it again. And then there's the Game Plus modes. They're pretty nifty, but I generally don't use them. I find them kind of useless. There are crosshairs, timers, FPS counters, and display alignment lines. The crosshairs, for the most part, with the games that I play, they're kind of redundant because I kind of like the in-game crosshairs more. The timer, since I'm not a pro gamer anyway, I think you need the timer if you need to have a on-screen display of how much time you have left, something like that. I never really found it useful. FPS counter, I use NVIDIA's default FPS counter, which I always find pretty useful. And the display alignment lines is only really useful to you if you have 2 or more of the same monitor, just so you're sure that they are aligned perfectly. But how good is it for gaming? Alright, so the meat of this monitor is how it performs in games. And to be honest with you, I could not be happier the first time I set the monitor at 180 hertz, coming from a 60 hertz panel, right? So I was used to using a 60 hertz panel for all of my life, pretty much. It felt like a world of difference. Even the experience on just Windows, like the desktop, was straight up smooth. Moving the windows around looks completely buttery smooth and different. Even the motion of the mouse, just the motion of the mouse as it glides across the screen is much smoother than it would be on a 60 hertz panel. It's something that you really just have to experience to understand. And every time I boot up my work laptop now, it feels kind of clunky. Like it's really very hard to kind of go back. And I feel like even doing productivity tasks on this monitor would be fine. You could adjust the blue light to prevent more eye fatigue if you like, and you've got yourself an overkill productivity monitor, just probably not for graphical work that requires 100% accurate color representation. And then, do you know when you're actually playing the game, do you know what it feels like to play games on a 180 hertz panel? Cheating. It kind of feels like cheating because especially if you know or if you imagine that there are others who aren't using 180 hertz panel or 144 hertz panel who are stuck with 60 hertz, you know that you've got an advantage. You just know that you do because everything is so buttery smooth. And on the games that I play, like Overwatch, Titanfall 2, Battlefield 4, where I can get well, for Titanfall 2, I kind of get stuck around 90 frames per second, 90 to 100. On Overwatch, I easily clear 180 frames after turning off dynamic reflections, I think. It just feels a lot better, and you feel like you're really making the most out of your GPU. But with that, can I consistently land headshots now? Of course not, but I actually find it a lot easier, well, a little easier to do it. Is it making me a better player? Maybe not. Hard to tell, but at least I'm having a really good experience while I try. So I highly, highly, highly recommend the PG248Q to any PC gamer who wants to take advantage of their video card. Games feel smooth, even with a little less detail because of the 1080 resolution. So if you're looking to upgrade and you want to be able to pick up your shooter game, look no further than the Asus ROG Swift PG248Q. Alright, this has been BIM. I will see you guys in the next one.